Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is the third episode of building 2D platforming game in Unity 3D engine. And last time we left off with we added new input system to our game, and we can manipulate our player. But as you can probably tell, the black square is not the correct representation of our player in a game. We can definitely do better. And as a game developer, one problem that you can have is where to get the assets from. And I found out this cool guy named Kenny in kenny.nl assets, who provides a lot of free 2D and 3D UI and even audio assets that you can use in your game. And I believe they are royalty free. And I'm going to search for, I believe this is called abstract. Yes, abstract platformer. So here you can see the preview and what could be possibly done with that. And this is looking good enough for our case to learn how to create the platformer. So just hit download, and that's gonna download the zip file and extract it. And I have it somewhere. Let me find it. Yeah, I have it here. And then basically what you could do, what you're interested the most is sprite sheets and tile sheet, sorry. So what I did in my project is I can create right here new folder for it, and I'm gonna call this art. And then I'm gonna go where I extracted the zip file. I'm gonna take the sprite sheet and tile sheets and just bring that to the art folder. And we're pretty much done. Then I can look at it in my Unity project. If I double click, it will show itself. So we have different tile sheets. This is one that combines all the elements all together, and then rest is pretty much the very same but grouped. And this is the enemy sprite sheet. And then you have some additional stuff like keys or gems, some other assets like doors and flowers and direction signs. Then you would have your player sheets for different types of player. And in the end, you will have terrain sheets. And we can use that, and we're going to start working with the player, of course. So first thing that you will see is when you click on a sprite sheet, you get new inspector right here. And texture type is sprite to 2D. Then we have to change the sprite mode to multiple, because this sprite represents multiple images, right? And let me check. Then you have to decide upon the pixel per unit. And from what I've seen, this is, as you can see, you have the size right here. So that's probably going to be 48 by 48, I would assume. Mesh type is, this is all good. The filter mode is going to be bilinear, so that's fine. And then the size, I believe that 512 should be good. Now, once these settings are applied, the most interesting thing for us is to actually cut the sprite sheet into separate sprites. So I can click on the sprite editor, and that's going to show a whole new window. Let me just bring that over here and maybe size it correctly. Right, and then what I could do, actually I can see that the images are a little bit blurry. So I'm gonna go to my sprite sheet and bump the max size. And maybe now that's gonna look, yeah, it looks a little bit better. I'm gonna go to slice. I'm gonna set the type to automatic, and as you can see, it will properly cut out the slices and find the edges around them, right? And then I can click apply. And now if I click here, I can see that my sprite sheet is actually cut, sorry, is cut into the different pieces, and I could use that pieces to create my player. So let's save everything right now. So going into my player, I can see that I have a sprite renderer here, and rigid body, box collider, all of the stuff we added previously. But what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to remove the sprite renderer component, and I'm going to create a child as a parent, and I'm going to just call this, let's call this sprite. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the sprite renderer here, and I could use some kind of sprite sheet just to represent my player. So now if I take a look at that, I can already see my player being rendered into the screen. The problem for now will be that what we have here is a static image, which isn't really what we wanted, right? We would like to apply some animations to it. So what we have to do is to go to our sprite, which is, this object's gonna be like the graphical representation of our player and everything connected to it, stuff like animations and so on. And I'm gonna find the component that is responsible for animation, and I'm gonna name it, I'm gonna choose, sorry, Animator. Okay, so we have the component that will be responsible for the animation of our player, but that's not enough. What we actually have to do is we have to create an animator component. As you can see right here, this is missing for now. So let's go to our assets and let's actually create a new folder. I'm gonna create this folder, call it animations, and inside of here I'm gonna create the folder for a player. Okay, and right in here I can create my animator controller. So let's go to create and find animator controller, and I'm gonna name it player animator controller. And then I can simply grab it and drag it to its place. Okay, so that part of Animator is done. What we need now is to actually create some kind of animations. So to do that, I'm going to go to the window and I'm going to choose animation, which I'm gonna spawn a new window right here, and I'm gonna slap it. Oops. So come on. I'm gonna slap it right here. Okay, and then I'm gonna click on the sprite, and here I can create a new. I clicked here on the sprite. Now I create new animation. let's do this. I'm going to press create. And in animations player folder, that's fine. I'm going to name this, because we have chosen the red player, the red sprite for our player. I'm going to call this player. We're going to create 3 animations. The idle, so the one that we'll use where there's no input, walk animation, and also jump animation. So let's start with red idle animation. Okay, cool. And what we actually have to do is to find the sprites that would be good enough to represent that our wonderful player is idle. So I'm gonna take that here, can drag the window. I'm gonna choose sprite sheet, and what I would probably use is some kind of animation. For example, these two. Our player is looking towards us, then he looks up, and maybe at the end he can just look back down. So what I can do is actually I can click and drag that sprite on the very start. Then I'm gonna take the one where he looks up, to that one. I'm gonna drag it to a 30, and then get the sprite back here around 1. I believe this is like 1 second, I believe. And then if I hit play, maybe it will be visible in the game. Yeah, you can see that when he's idle, he's like impatiently looking up and down. I could even make it a little bit longer by just dragging it off to, say, 2. Let's click and drag that. Maybe that's gonna look like a little bit more natural. Oh yeah, that actually looks better. I kind of seem bored and uninterested. That's kind of cool. Okay, so we have to decide what animation is gonna be playing when, and we can use that, we can create that in Animator, and already you can see that this is gonna be our entry state. So basically, if nothing is happening, we'll move from the entry, which is like the starting point, to a player idle. So that's cool. What we can do now is create another animation, the walk animation, right, or running animation. And we'll also use 3 frames for that. So you can go right here to this drop down and click create new clip. And I'm gonna name this, let's go to animations and player, and this is gonna be player red walk animation. Yeah, and it's already added to Animator, so that's great. And we have to figure out the proper sprite sheets for the walking, right? So I'm gonna assume that's gonna be this one as a starting point, then this one maybe here, then this one in around here, and let me look, probably this one, and then he should go to the end state, back to the end state. I'm gonna, well, let's leave it at that for now. Yeah, and maybe let's play this. Yeah, we should probably add this again and move that here. Let's try that. It kind of feels like he's swimming, right? So maybe that's not perfect. Let me check. Oh, yeah, maybe that looks kind of like he's swimming. So maybe we could go with removing that and removing that. And then just bring that to the front. Bring that here. Let's try now. Better, but he feels kind of slow. So let's bring those closer together. Like this and this. So 10 and 20. Yeah, that would do for a simple walking animation. So we have that. And then I would also like to do the jump animation. So this is gonna be actually the easiest one. Let's do player red jump, and that's gonna be like 1 frame animation. Or maybe 2 frames. Let's try that one and then that one and again this one. So let's try that. Yeah, that looks kind of nice. He will definitely, when he's in the air, he will definitely look like he's jumping, right? And he's really happy about that. So what we have is we have those 3 animations defined, and now we have to decide when they will be changing. So we have to define the transition between the states of being idle, walking, and jumping. So I'm going to define some parameters here, and you can define them and use them in transitions. Let me just reset my layout and set it to default. And then open up the animator. Yeah, you can define some parameters to decide when is a given state being transitioned to another. And I would like to add 2 simple Boolean properties here. That's going to be is walking and another is jumping. Okay, and then I can define my transitions. So I could definitely go from walk to idle and from idle to walk. I can go from idle to jump, and I definitely can end my jump. And then I can also go from walk to jump, and I can go from jump to walk. Okay. And then clicking on these arrows, I can define some conditions, but also because we're working in simple 2D, we have to define some settings. So I want to have an exit time, and I would like the transition to be immediate. And I'm going to do that for all the transitions. So let's uncheck has exit time and put 0 everywhere. And this and this. Okay, now we're good. And now for the condition. As you can see here, transition needs at least 1 condition or an exit time to be valid. Otherwise, it will be ignored. And you may have some kind of exit time because, for example, you have a sequence of transition. If your animation is more complicated than that, you may have some build up before jumping, like somebody is crouching a little bit and then jumping, and then different animation at the peak of the jump and different animation when falling down, right? But in our case, it's rather simple. So the condition to go from is walking from idle to walk is that he's walking and he's not jumping. And here we have is walking false and is jumping false. Then from idle to jump, it's going to be different because he's not walking, but he's jumping, and we're gonna use those in our code. And the same goes here. So is walking is false, and then is jumping is also false. And now this transition. So is walking is true, and then is jumping is true. Sorry, is jumping is false, and then we have here is walking is true and is jumping is true. And I believe that are all the cases, right? Yeah. So now with our animator setup and our animations created, what we have to do is to write some code to fire up those conditions. Okay, so what we could do, definitely looking on our scripts right here, is just to go to PlayerMovement and handle the animations right here. But we are trying at this a little bit to keep our code separated based on the context and have some separation of concerns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another script and call this AnimationController. Okay, and that's going to be mono behavior. And just so we won't forget that we're gonna slap it to our player. So we're gonna add this to the player, even though that our animator is living in a sprite, right? But I'm gonna keep my scripts here, at least for now. And this, I'm gonna treat this as only for animations and graphical representation. So let's grab our animation controller, drag and drop it. Drag and drop it. Yeah, drag and drop it. And let's go to our code. We're gonna need some stuff here. So we're definitely, let's bump it up even more. I'm gonna need a reference to an animator component. And we could make that serialized, but we're gonna just grab it via code. So in awake function, I'm just gonna say that animator is get component in children because it lives in a child game object. Grab animator from that, and I'm gonna write two simple public setter functions. So public void set is walking, and that's gonna take the animator and just set bool is walking to, oh, that's like ID, so is walking, right? And writer is smart enough to tell me that we should actually cache that and use cache property, and it's gonna generate that part of code, which is like the reference created by animator string to hash. It's gonna be a reference to, give me a second, is going to be a reference to that parameter that, that parameter that we have defined right here, right? As you can imagine, the same is going to be for is jumping. So let's copy that and change that to is jumping. Okay, and that's going to be that. Of course, if we try and run our game right now, even though we move, what we'll get is just the idle animation. So let's move to PlayerMovement and let's get here, and we're gonna reference the Animator controller here. So input manager, this is gonna be private Animator AnimationController. AnimationController. We're gonna get the reference to that AnimationController. Get the component. Oops. Type AnimationController. That's cool. And now we have to set our properties. So use the function that we defined. So first, let's decide whether our hero is walking, and he is walking left or right whenever the calculated velocity x is not equal to 0. It's rather simple. This will, of course, resolve to Boolean value being true or false. And the same is going to be for our jumping. Set is, come on. Oh, I didn't write that function. Silly me. Public void set is walking Boolean. No, set is jumping Boolean is jumping. It's gonna be pretty much the same. We're going to set the Boolean is jumping. The value is gonna be is jumping. Okay. And now I can use that here. And we're gonna check the velocity of y-axis. And if it's not equal to 0, we're gonna resolve that to true, otherwise that's gonna be false. Let's check that. Okay, so yeah, that looks kind of cool. The problem, and the walking also works. The problem now is that the animation is being played in the wrong direction. I would love for his eye to look to the other side when we're walking left, right? And this can be done rather easily. We'll just go to our code, and here I'm gonna define basically what we have to do is go to the child sprite and take its transform and revert the x scale to -1 to make the sprite like flip to the other side, right? So I have to get the reference to that child transform of that sprite game object in a script that is being attached to the parent game object in our player. So this is going to be rather easy. I'm going to just say private transform. I'm going to call this child transform, or maybe because we can have many children, sprite transform. That's good. Sprite transform, I'm going to get component in children transform. And here I'm gonna flip it based on the velocity. I'm going to say sprite transform local. Well, that's actually silly. Sprite transform, right? But this is of type transform. So can I just say, yeah, local scale? That's better. That's gonna be new vector free, and even though we're working in 2D environment, we have three values for a scale and position and rotation, right? So we have to create vector free, and I'm gonna say based on the velocity, check whether this is greater than 0. Yeah, if it is greater than 0, then the value I'm looking for should be -1, and other one should be, in other case, it should be 1. For y, it should be 1, and 1, and z also 1. Okay, so we decide the x velocity in this ternary statement, checking whether the velocity of the x-axis is bigger than 0. If it is, then we flip the scale to -1, and if it's not, then we set it to 1. So let's see how this works. Okay, and oh, of course, I did it incorrectly. That should be, of course, be 1 and -1. I don't know why I did that there. Brain fart, you might call it. Let's try this. Yeah, and now it looks like it works left and right. So yeah, now we have some kind of character working on our screen with cool animations. I really like that jump animations with the look down in the middle or look towards you. So probably in the next episode, we're going to handle building our world and building some kind of environment and grid or some kind of level for our little guy to move around. So thank you, and I'm going to see you the next one. Goodbye.